This is Akashvani. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you a discussion on G-7 Financial Ministers Meeting, Global Economic Challenges and Opportunities. The participants are S.P. Sharma, Economic Analyst, and Arjun J. Chaudhary, Akashvani Correspondent.
The G7 Financial Ministers meeting is taking place in Japan, and soon the next meeting will take place in Hiroshima. Dr. Sharma, what are the topics on the G7 Ministers meeting agenda? Starting with the U.S. debt ceiling standoff, I understand U.S. President Joe Biden is not part of this meeting, but what are the challenges really for the global economy? Is that ceiling going to be raised as a starting point?
Yes, Arjun, I think the challenges are very worrying. Actually, the debt is a major challenge. The inflation which is still very high in many economies, that is also a major challenge, not only for a few countries, but also for the whole global economy. That is becoming a major challenge again and again. And then the skyrocketed commodity prices, which has challenged the inflation trajectory and escalated the prices and impacted the interest rate scenarios of many economies and consumption demand, and then again slowdown in the employment creation efforts of the many economies. So there are many challenges of the coronavirus, and unfortunately we had not recovered from coronavirus, and again the Russia-Ukraine war hit the whole world economic scenario, and now these challenges must be addressed to move forward and to minimize the impact of such geopolitical developments and the global headwinds on their respective economies. So I think this is very important meeting, and at this juncture they should think about the possible measures which are helpful for the economies to come out from such worries, so that they are able to serve their economies better and improve the standards of living of their respective citizens.
Dr. Sharma, as a starting point, the U.S. economy and its health is a prime concern to the global economy. We're talking about the U.S. dollar transactions that take place globally. It affects the supply chain and, more importantly, the exchange rate between currencies as well. How important is the U.S. debt ceiling crisis right now? What is the fiscal deficit facing the U.S. economy? What does it mean in terms of moderating expenditure? What is the dispute that's taking place in Congress? Why is it that the debt ceiling is not being raised? What does this mean for the U.S. economy?
Yes, this is very challenging actually, because the U.S. is the largest economy in the world economic system and dollar is the dominating currency. So that's why this becomes important to address such issues like banking issue and the debt ceiling and the rising fiscal deficit in the economy and out of control inflation scenario, which has forced the U.S. Fed to increase the interest rates again and again. So all these developments are impacting not only the U.S. economy but also the whole world economic scenario, because this is the leading economy and the largest economy in the world economic system, and dollar is the dominating currency, and there are more than 80% transactions, still 80% transactions which are undertaken throughout the world in the dollar terms. This is very worrying. Actually, this has to be addressed. And as I mentioned that debt ceiling is a major issue, but that should also be worried many decades ago, because US debt to GDP ratio is already very high since the last many years, more than 100%. And that is a worrying factor, that despite such worrying factors, US economy is still not that much serious to reduce this problem and to address this problem in the last many years. They have to address this problem with the expenditure control and reducing the fiscal deficit. So, though coronavirus impacted drastically the whole economic scenario, not only in US but throughout the world, and the demand was killed by the coronavirus, but now as the economies are coming out of this crisis and they have recovered significantly from the coronavirus, but the economies like the advanced economies, they are still facing so many challenges to come out from the downturns caused by coronavirus, and their growth rates are still below the pre-pandemic level. So that is a worrying factor. If they are not able to grow fast, then they will not be able to address the debt issues and the issues related to the fiscal deficit.
For the benefit of our listeners, Dr. Sharma, we're talking about the repayment of government security, the bonds that the U.S. economy releases for the benefit of the public. They get a return on the investment. Do you see a possibility of default on repayment by the U.S. economy, or are they going to increase the debt ceiling? The Federal Reserve will print more notes for ensuring repayment.
Yes, they have to now take such kind of measures because this becomes important as the economy is not growing much and their growth rate is decelerating after the 2021 and growth is not in a anticipated trajectory. They want to grow, but the challenges are there. Demand is not happening in that much comfortable level and they are impacted by the inflationary scenario. So at this juncture, I think they have to restructure their thought process regarding the inflation trajectory and increasing the interest rates again and again because that will not work to address so many macroeconomic challenges. So rationalization of the thought process regarding the economic implementation is a must at this juncture to move forward and to address such kind of tedious issues.
This 3-day meet of finance ministers and central bank governors of G7 countries, do you think there would be a rethink, as you just mentioned, about buying into US treasuries which are now subject of default? Do you see them continue buying or unwinding their position as Japan has done partly?
Yes, they have to unwind the position because now again they have to support the economy with some stimulus and they must take measures about such restructuring of bond market and restructuring about their printing of the dollar. So they have to move forward with some support to the economy with the support of some stimulus because otherwise economy will go down and they will be in severe recession going forward. So as they are the largest economy, so that's why they have to think about it so that whole economic scenario is not impacted much and some macroeconomic stability is there because the scenario overall in the global economy is very fragile as the Russia-Ukraine war and the global headwinds are not subsiding and worries are coming again and again. So that has impacted the whole supply chain scenario of the world economic system and inflation is again and again hitting the many vulnerable economies. So at this juncture, I think rational thinking and restructuring about the new economic thought process must be there and the new global order must be there to address such kind of issues because traditional parameters and traditional measures are not working and the economy may see a major fallout in their economic growth rates as US is already projected to grow at 1.6% from 2.1% last year and again in the next year the economic scenario is not that much bright. They are projected at 1.1% only by the IMF. So all these projections are providing a worrying situation to the many economies. If the advanced economies are facing such a scenario, then the world economic growth will not be in a strong trajectory and economies may face so many issues and challenges.
Dr. Sharma, you've spoken at length about the supply chain issues and how it's linked to inflation and more importantly the crisis that the global economy is facing with rising prices of commodities and other products and services. Just coming back to the US right now, the collapse of the Silicon Valley Bank, which is now subject to be underwritten by another private sector financial institution. Then you have the First Republic Bank, which has seen a bank run. How solid is the banking norms in the US? Do you see it spreading this bank run crisis that we are seeing in the US where banks don't have sufficient reserves to cover the deposit risk?
Yes, I think that is still a worrying factor because the crisis, if emerges, then that takes so much time to adjust and the shorter to then the medium term and we look forward that this problem will be adjusted and this problem will be addressed with the rational measures by the largest economy. But as compared with the advanced economies, we are much stronger as compared with their banking system. Though we face some contagious impact, but our banking system has proven very resilient as compared with many advanced economies. Like during the Lehman crisis, again after the Lehman crisis, then during the US-China trade war, then during the coronavirus, and now the geopolitical developments like the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Our banking system is very resilient and we are moving forward with the growth trajectory and our banking sector is showing the good performance and economy is also in a very much shape to move forward and we are the fastest moving economy. So I think we have to take some measures which are beneficial for the strength of the economy and for the resilience of the economy to mitigate and to minimize the impact of such developments in the advanced economy so that we are able to maintain our growth trajectory as our Honorable Finance Minister very positive about the economy and invited investments from the advanced economies like from Japan and addressed the issues and said that we have improved a lot in the ease of doing business and we have removed so many clauses which were impacting and tedious about the businesses and ease of doing business is becoming more lucrative in the country. And we have PLI scheme for the 14 sectors and we are looking forward for other sectors also. and we are skilling our manpower so that the growth becomes sustainable and strong in the coming times.
Fresh sanctions are being imposed on Russia, apart from the other sanctions already imposed, especially exports from the developing countries into Russia. What about China? They're trying to impose sanctions on China. How successful will that be, and what does this mean for the global supply chain?
I think such sanctions are not that much beneficial for the whole world scenario, because these sanctions will impact again the supply chains, and supply chains are already disrupted by the coronavirus and again the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and many economies are trying to establish and re-engineer their supply chain. So again, such kind of disruption, such kind of sanctions will impact the global trade scenario. And again, if the trade scenario is impacted, the manufacturing processes are also impacted, and the production possibilities in factories are also impacted. And then to support their respective economies, the fiscal deficit scenarios are also impacted, and the debt to GDP ratio also becomes problematic like the US economy. So moving ahead, I think we have to take the rational measures so that the whole world economic scenario is not impacted and the supply chains at least remains intact, because supply chains are not for a particular country, because if the supply chain is disrupted or impacted in one country which is a major supply hub, then the whole world scenario is impacted and the inflation factor also becomes worrying. So I think we have to take the rational measures and to address such kind of conflicts, not by imposing the sanctions on the economies, but by resolving such issues with the dialogue or with the discussions to settle such kind of conflicts.
You mentioned about the global economic challenges, which are many. What about the opportunities for a nation like India? You mentioned about how India is still resilient. We have a robust banking system. Our capital adequacy ratio is quite high. We have reserves in place. There's no bank runs. The economy is growing at a fast rate. We have IMF projections. We have our own central bank projections as well. What are the opportunities for the Indian economy? You mentioned about how we are trying to get some of the investments diverted into India, which is weaning away from the US.
Yes, Arjun, because now if we go by numbers, like our export trajectory, we are increasing our exports, and last year our exports were $770 billion, increased from $673 billion with a growth of more than 10%. And before that, we recovered significantly in the exports from the coronavirus. Now our trajectory of exports is becoming so strong, and we have projections that we will be a $2 trillion export economy by 2030. So we have many opportunities in the global supply chains, as we are strong in the services exports also, and our merchandise exports are also increasing in a significant way, and we are competitive in so many sectors like the pharmaceutical sector, our engineering sector, and then our food processing sector. Like we posted a $50 billion exports last financial year. Our exports in the agri and food processing were more than $50 billion. And before that, these were only $40 billion. And we are increasing by more than $10 billion every year in the agriculture sector and agri and food processing. So our sectors like the agriculture and food processing, pharmaceuticals, then our engineering goods, these sectors are becoming more and more prominent in the global economy with the price competitiveness and quality of our products and increased market access in so many economies. So going forward, I think this is the right time, and the time is most opportune to become more and more strong in the supply chains, particularly in the products where there is a strong demand in the world economy, and we are able to produce those products with the ease of doing business and support provided by the government like the PLI, which has impacted positively and significantly our manufacturing sector, and which is also becoming visible in terms of our increased merchandise exports in the global economy.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. S.P. Sharma, for being with us on this program and discussing at length the G7 Financial Ministers meeting that is being held in Japan in this 3-day meet, where global economic challenges and opportunities are being discussed in detail and length. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on G7 Financial Ministers Meeting, Global Economic Challenges and Opportunities. The participants were S.P. Sharma, Economic Analyst, and Arjun J. Chaudhary, Akashvani Correspondent. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of Akashvani. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may share your feedback about this program through email at airnsdtalks@gmail.com or WhatsApp on 928-909-4044.